Welcome back. It's great to be back here in Detroit. In these times with rising rates, driver shortages, material shortages, and new KPIs to consider. Joining me on stage to explore how we're mitigating some of these existing challenges and how freight network management is being redefined are three industry experts. We have Doug Cantriel, Service Parts Head of Transportation, North America at Ford, Court Havarth, Senior Director, Solutions Design at Ryder, and Dick DeBoer, Executive Vice President of Supply Chain at Carter Logistics. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So Doug, as you're sat next to me, I'm going to pick on you first.
All right.
So you've just officially started a new role with Ford, leading the Service Parts, Logistics and Transportation team. What are your immediate priorities coming into the role, and what are you planning for the medium and longer term?
I think right now it's just kind of understanding the landscape. It's a very complex organization, especially with the challenges now with constraints and capacity. So it's just really trying to understand that and where we can kind of get some quick wins in that regarding area. I think other areas, in the future is really how can we expand. How can we modernize what we're doing, bring in technology that we don't have today, start getting greater visibility across the network, allowing for more predictive, incorporating more AI and machine learning, so decisions are more proactive instead of us reacting to situations. So it's a lot about the future and technology for us.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure that's a topic we're going to delve into a little bit deeper, especially with our other experts on the panel. Dick and Court, great to have you here. Freight network managements are under huge pressure from a myriad of issues right now and challenges. What are your top priorities right now at this crucial moment? I'll go with you, Dick.
Yeah, the driver shortage obviously has been talked about at nausea end in the last 16 months, but it continues to be a major focus. And if we change routes around for our customers, it can drive drivers out of the industry. And we just have to protect our drivers. We're getting a little bit more specific on the type of freight we'll look at. And the first question is it driver-friendly freight? Is it running consistent? And are the drivers home? And can we retain the drivers? So it's a driver market right now that all of our focus is based on in our organization. And it's also a customer market to make sure that the cube utilization is there on the back of the trailers and that we can do more with less at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the driver shortage, I mean, we were hit hard. A British person on a British Airways flight coming over to the US for this conference, and believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, they weren't able to serve cups of tea due to the driver shortage. So the struggle is definitely real and felt not just in automotive.
No,
Cool.
I'd second what Dick said. Is a big portion that we're going to talk about for the next 40 minutes is going to be whether it's the driver shortage, securing capacity, rate increases. Those are all major issues that we're focusing on, whether it's with our drivers that are in the seats or our partner carriers. But a big thing for us is trying to secure capacity and make sure that you balance when you have the capacity with having the demand available. So when it does shift, being able to shift with that as agile as possible. And then when it comes to an opportunity to Dick's point, looking at new opportunities for those drivers, making sure that they are driver friendly, but also working with our partners, our customers, to ensure that they are shippers of choice, working on delays, working on opportunities to increase the amount of volume so we can have some permanence in some of the chaos that we see.
Yeah, most definitely. Interesting. And let's stick with driver shortages. So clearly it's a major issue, but let's delve into a little bit. What are we doing to mitigate? How are we making the occupation more friendly, more attractive? What are you seeing, be it from a wider industry perspective, or individually at your companies?
We were just actually talking about this. I think you've got to think a little bit differently. Do you need to send in a 53-footer driver with a Class A going into a location? Do you need to use a smaller truck potentially and make multiple runs? So I think it's causing people to think differently from that perspective, and how can you leverage things that you haven't really thought of in the past and use that in the future to kind of free up that other capacity that is being constrained right now.
Yeah, from our organization, we're looking at every customer from top to bottom and seeing, really charting out their moves and their frequencies of their moves and which customers are driver friendly or not. Obviously, this chip shortage has created a lot of chaos out there. So you got a lot of spikes in shipments, and then you got a lot of valleys. And so we're going to our customers and the ones that are not shipping consistently and saying either we're going to need to get off these lanes or we're going to need to change something either financially or get more level. So that's what we're doing with our customer base. As far as the drivers are concerned, it's really not, it is pay, but it's more so quality, the quality of the job and getting home every night. I mean, the people that we're trying to recruit, on average, people coming into the industry are like 35 years old. Well, they're used to having a cell phone. They grew up with a cell phone. Well, you can't have a cell phone while you're driving. So you got a lot of issues of trying to recruit new people into the industry. We're doing our best. We're analyzing what best practices are within the industry to try to recruit and retain the drivers. So we aren't giving up on this whatsoever. We're gonna make sure that we continue to be best in class as far as retaining our drivers.
Yeah.
On that point, I mean, within the cab, that's the driver's home for a big chunk of that day. So ensuring that it is comfortable, they have the best equipment possible. I think the last stat that I saw, 94% increase since the beginning of last year till now of number of openings, but a 54% decrease in the number of people that are applying. A lot of that's pandemic related, the scare, people retiring early, not enough coming in. So Ryder's doing a big focus, one, wages, benefits, ensuring that we go after routes that are driver friendly or design routes that are driver friendly. But I think a big thing for us is trying to recruit in new markets. We're partnering with the troops in trucking. We're partnering with women in trucking, just to try to bring new faces, give them good competitive wages, but then also make sure once again that they understand that they're not on the road 24/7, 365. Give them an opportunity to be able to live their life. So it turns into an industry once again that they want to stay in.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just on one item as far as equipment is, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure everybody follows the automotive industry, but the Class 8 tractors have a big issue also that we cannot go out and replace our equipment. So we're behind on our replacement plan. And I'm sure Ryder is also, just because of the chip shortage. So we're out to into 2022-23 to get new tractors in. That affects driver retention. So there's a lot of side things that are going on as far as tractor availability and keeping the fleet fresh that's affecting this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you mentioned a couple of points there. So I'm interested to delve into if we're seeing a shift between FTL and LTL tonnage as a recent trend, and you're talking about the opportunities to not use 53s for these. Is there an elephant in the room? Possibly. But is there an elephant in the room of certain companies coming in with their last mile delivery with increased rates of pay, stealing that market as well? Is that just making it unsustainable?
I don't know. I think there's a new norm. I mean, I think technology has helped driving this as well. If you can provide these tools, this technology and visibility, I think people are willing to pay for that. I think that's going to be a big leverage. The differentiator, everyone's kind of competing in the same space, but what differentiates you from a competitor? Is it that technology? Is it other means of opportunity is the flexibility with vehicle sizes. I think that's kind of what differentiated that I'm thinking about as I do this. Like, what do you bring to the table that your competitor doesn't?
Yeah.
I'd say from a LTL versus full truckload, there's more of an opportunity, as we've seen with LTL, to be able to consolidate. And LTL has been doing it for years, where we may talk about it later on as far as OEMs that are sharing freight, making sure that you're getting the most and you're paying for specific footprints. That's what LTL has been doing for a long period of time. You're getting a lot of more competitors that come into the market that have that capability. And I think the OEMs and the tier ones are realizing that there's a lot to be gained there that helps support with different type of equipment, and then bring that line haul finally in from a cross-dock to be able to support specific loads into our customers. But I think that needs to open up even further to help support the difference between the FTL and the LTL.
Yeah. As far as the LTL is concerned, I don't know how many LTL people are out there, but I think the whole industry has had a problem, and it isn't one carrier. It's pretty well across the board, where you got all the tonnage spiking and truckload tonnage because of the cost going over to LTLs, and it's putting a major stress on the marketplaces and the delivery system for LTL. So we're telling our customers, expect another day delay on LTLs, because if someone has an embargo on freight for a specific day that they can't take any freight into their facility, it just backs up the whole supply chain. So that is definitely an issue as far as the density of LTL coming in. On a side issue, I mean, from our perspective, we're trying to do probably a little bit more tours of trucks, where instead of every part every day, like 5 days a week, we just soon not do that. But in some cases, we're looking at it and say, okay, we can pick up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from you, and then Tuesday and Thursday. So this 40% cube on one day turns into 60, 70% cube throughout the week. So we're really drilling down on that issue to try to increase cube utilization.
I mean, it's an interesting point, and when there's material shortages, I guess there's a big balance between getting that product to the customer ASAP and optimizing the load. So from your customers' perspectives, where is that balance right now? Are they prepared to wait an extra couple of days or extra few hours, or is it just get it to the plant as quickly as possible?
I would say that we're trying to partner with our customers to understand that historically it was all 100% about cost mitigation. Let's the cheapest possible freight coming in. If we need to cancel loads every other day, as we're doing pull aheads and continuous moves, that may not be the most advantageous from a rate and driver perspective moving forward. So consistent movements that provides flexibility, whether it's our assets on the road or our partner carriers, giving them the flexibility, but also if they are securing capacity, making sure that we balance that with demand. But I think it does start with you want to optimize the network as much as possible. You want to develop milk runs. You want to understand where consolidation points can occur. But at the same point, if we continue to make the network volatile when it doesn't necessarily need to be, because we are trying to reduce so much cost, that can have an adverse effect on rates over time.
And we mentioned earlier collaboration, perhaps between OEMs. It seems like the utopia. It's been very siloed. Carriers working even with a number of OEM customers, but it's all been very separate in the past. So we're starting to see a shift, perhaps out of necessity, for this optimization. And is this a clear path forward when freight network management is so challenging?
I think it's definitely an opportunity. I mean, we have partnerships and alliances with Volkswagen. Why couldn't we explore that? I haven't looked at that yet, but it's something that's definitely on the radar for me to say, could we start optimizing that cube in some lanes, some regions? Is that something potential? I don't know. I think there's definitely an opportunity out there. You're starting to see more of the collaboration take place. I think it's a big mind shift that change that people need to think about this, but the market, the way it is today, I think is pushing people in directions that they haven't necessarily thought about in the past.
So there's opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, generally on our tier ones that we service, we're seeing anywhere from 15% low to 30% high on reduction of carbon footprint by optimizing the network. So it's worked very well within the tier one network. The OEMs were starting to do that, mostly with the Asian OEMs. And there's a lot of opportunities out there because, I mean, they're pulling parts from exactly the same tier ones. So that is something that we kicked off in the last couple of years. It's going very well. We're working on our network to expand that. And I think it's something that just from a sustainability standpoint and also from a financial standpoint makes so much sense to continue down that path.
I think there's a lot of opportunity that still exists. There's, whether it's, I would just say with any OEM that we've come across, interacted with, it's surprising that you see so much consolidation and support on aftermarket. So anything that's going out to the dealerships, there's a lot of support there for sharing and making sure that you incur the cost because they're going roughly into the same auto hub location for all these dealerships. That same thing can apply to Dick's point where you have some of these tier ones, tier twos that are in outreaching regions that we're all going to different logistics providers going to the same location. Those can be consolidated, brought in once again, and basically send that information or that material directly to one specific OEM. But there's a big chunk of the initial pool point that can be leveraged across many OEMs as well as tier ones, especially if they work in unison.
So the opportunity is out there, ladies and gentlemen. Let's grasp it. So I should just take a moment as well to say if there are any questions, we do have some microphones for those in the room to the side, or if you prefer, you can go through the app and you have to click on the stream session and it comes up with the option to post a Q&A, polls that will run in other sessions. And for those of you tuning in on the GRIP platform, you can put questions in there and we'll try and monitor those as we go. So please do keep those coming in. Doug, your role previously before this current one, head of supply chain digital services at Ford. So you mentioned digitalization, visibility, utilization of data and technology is going to be key to your plans. Is it going to play a central role for aftermarket and beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very important. We're actually trying to see how we're going to leverage information across the ecosystem and pull that in and have beneficial factors to multiple groups within the organization. The technology is going to drive. I mean, the insights you're getting from technology, the visibility allows you to make better decisions. And then you put in AI and machine learning on top of that, it just makes it even more powerful. So getting away from spreadsheets and access databases and things like that and bringing things into the modern world is going to be key for organizations to move forward in this space. And you have to invest in this space. Because if you're not, you're going to get passed by. Because there's the technology is evolving so quickly that it's just evolving that you need to be in front of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dick, from your perspective, how are you utilizing data and technology?
Yeah, I mean, as I think was stated in an earlier session, is if you don't have good data, you aren't going to be making good decisions. So good decisions are based upon good data. We've had good data, and the problem that we have had that we've kind of solved is pushing it out to our customers. So right now through Power BI, we identify the KPIs and then just push it out to them so that they just not only have the KPIs, but they've got all the grassroots behind it. And they can do their own analysis to verify exactly what we're explaining to them. So it's really helped in the analytical side and working with our customer base. And it's helped in our safety side too. I mean, we get alerts from our camera system in our trucks on lane departures, on hard brakes. We've got videos. All that information spikes back to us. We can identify drivers that we need to bring in for additional training. And it's helped our CSA scores tremendously and really has driven safety down through our organization. It's been out there anyway, but now we're in the cab of the trucks with the truck drivers, and it's really helped us to manage that the safety side of the business.
And Court, how are you utilizing data and you've seen the transformation taking place at Ryder and the solutions you're providing?
Right. Business intelligence and analytics has been a huge investment for Ryder for the last 3 years. A large group that's just solely focused on ensuring that we can supply not only supply chain health for our drivers and our customers, but making that 100% visible in real time to them. If you think about the chip shortage, understanding where risks are at every step in the supply chain, giving that access to your customers, as Dick's point, ensuring that they know if there is a bottleneck at a specific distribution center or a cross-dock at point of origin, but being able to see those in real time and be able to make decisions on that. One comes from the best data possible. It's great to be able to see where trucks are on the road. It's another thing to understand what parts are on those trucks that are on the road. So that's a good trusted partnership with your customer to make sure that you have the best data coming in. You can do the right type of analysis on it and then connect that back to not only visibility when it's on the road, but then also after it occurs, while it's occurring, understand what the real impact is through intelligence. And then you can really connect that with market intelligence as well to see what other customers are doing and provide some of that dynamic capability back to other customers as well to ensure if something needs to change, if there's something that needs to adjust from one industry to the next, it gives you the opportunity to react very quickly.
I think it's important, though. I mean, we talk about data, but understanding structured data, like meaningful data, because you can drown in data. And I think it's working with your team to make sure the data is structured correctly. You can access it in a meaningful way because, you start pulling all this data, you're just going to start drowning in it. So having that clearly defined before you go down that path is extremely important.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly, we're making advancements. We're starting to utilize technologies we've just heard, but is the supply chain still too fragmented? Is there still a way to go? And you've mentioned AI, machine learning, but I get the impression that this is something that's sort of far out there.
I don't think so. I mean, I think we're taking paths. Visibility is creating this what-if scenario, and you're actually doing some modeling real time to say, this has happened now, what's going to happen over here? That's even going to advance furthermore with machine learning and AI, and you're getting to points where humans aren't necessarily making the immediate decision. You're being provided recommendations. And now instead of you trying to analyze each one of those situations to come up with those recommendations are given to you in real time, allowing you to respond quickly, as Court was saying, right? I see something happening, I can mitigate that before it ever impacts my customer. So it's extremely important where this is going. There's a lot to go, there's fragmentation, but it's real, it's happening.
Yeah. But and if I push that point a little bit further on that fragmentation, all those different silos, when are we going to be able to connect those so that we're getting visibility right across the supply chain rather than just individual, this is where this is at, and this is this moment in time, you can make a decision about that.
It's a great point, and you have to look across the supply chain. When you do this, you have to do this holistically. You can't say, I'm going to do this for one piece of the business. So you have to confer with your partners across the organization. Say, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What information do you have? What systems are used? Can we use that? Is it perfect for me? Maybe not. Maybe it's 85% of what I need. Does it make sense to leverage that just because of the power of having that available and moving quickly? Or do you say, I need to go down this path and we need to conform over here? But talking amongst the organization, the ecosystem is extremely important. That eliminates that fragmentation. And there is a lot of fragmentation, self-induced, if you will.
Yeah.
I would beg to say that there's a lot more that we can do that aligns manufacturers, OEMs with tier ones, tier twos, and then alignment with a specific OEM that may have 2 or 3 LLPs along with partner carriers. There's a lot of data that's flowing, whether it's EDI, API, there's data that's going everywhere. And having more technology and I'd say a collaborative support or agreements on how that's controlled so that everybody gets the best of that data. I think that the data's there. It's just now coming to a consensus on what the right way to approach making sure everybody has access to the right information that doesn't necessarily steal competitive intelligence, but provides an ability to reduce costs for everybody involved.
Yeah. The capacity constraints in global supply chain has brought supply chain footprints under big review, under the spotlight, if you will. Are you seeing changes in the manufacturing footprints of your customers? And how is this affecting the freight network management, and how are you having to adapt? And maybe I'll go to you, Dick, on this.
Yeah. Normally, our customers are tier ones and OEMs, and we're getting a lot more requests from tier twos, which are being pushed from the tier ones to save cost than normal 5% per year. Well, a lot of these tier twos might not have Mexico operations, let's say, and are moving down to Mexico to reduce labor costs, but then they're rolling back on us to develop the supply chain to make sure that the supply chain stays seamless to the customer itself. So I'm seeing a lot of push down, a lot more push down from tier ones to tier twos to reduce cost, and that issue is coming with Mexico production. Some of this also has to do with the ocean freight and bottlenecks on their ocean freight and items that they need to do to make sure the inventory levels are up, but a combination of that. So I do see that trend occurring. We're working with those tier twos to develop these networks to make sure that that product is there on time.
I think 2 points on it. First, we're seeing a lot of requests from a multitude of customers on center of gravity studies, adjustments to the footprint, whether or not those decisions ultimately are made, being able to perform that and understand what the impact would be by moving those FOB points to another location. I think some are making decisions to near shore in certain cases based upon that. But I think a secondary piece, even if those decisions aren't made, there is a collective decision that from a globalization, when crises or pandemics hit that are overseas, not in North America, the bottlenecks can ripple all the way through, and the delays that you experience from global freight coming near shore have a pretty significant impact when you have to expedite air freight, et cetera. So I think we're seeing a trend where there's a lot more nearshoring of inventory from overseas to be able to help support that pipeline. So when production can resume, it's very close to the manufacturing center, as opposed to now begin operations once again and then begin the process of getting stuff through ports and then ultimately manufacturing.
Interesting, and I do want to touch upon the North American footprint, especially Mexico, but we had a question coming from the audience, and it's anonymous, so be warned. Given the rising cost of transportation, are OEMs, and I think we can broaden this out, are OEMs recalculating the inventory versus transportation cost equation? Is that driving different choices? So I guess from your customers' perspectives, and Doug, from your perspective?
Yeah, again, we were kind of talking a little bit about this. You're thinking differently. Again, I'll use the smaller vehicles at types. Are there things you can do? Would it make sense to secure pallet positions on wide-body aircraft compared to spotting and team driving across the country? There's things you need to just start thinking about differently that normally had not really been in play. They were completely reactive, but now think about air cargo. If I hypothetically secured a position on an aircraft going across the country, how does that compare from a cost perspective as to sending a trailer over there? Could I use that trailer in a more strategic or tactical way instead of sending it across the country when I may not have full capacity of that trailer? So it's definitely making me think differently.
Yeah, a couple items along those lines. One is definitely team drivers compared to the last time we were sitting here 2 years ago. I mean, the team drivers are becoming more and more rare. So we're at 60 cents per mile more in some cases for team drivers rather than solo drivers. So it really focuses the people and the supply chain managers to take a look at this and say, should we reduce the amount of teams that are necessary by building some inventories in certain cases. Although we aren't about building inventories, it's at the end of the day with the team shortage, it's here to stay with COVID and the pandemic, I mean, drivers just don't want to be in that close spot with each other. So it is a major issue. As far as OEMs are concerned, the OEMs that we have, they're continuing to build their routes to get their parts in every day. They're still practicing lean practices. Now we are seeing more collaboration in different parts of the U.S. To where supply chains are more common between them. So I'm definitely seeing more collaboration, which will drive cubes up and costs down.
I think over the last 3 to 4 years, the new manufacturing sites that we're seeing, no matter which OEM it is, they're built lean. So there's not much you can do with a lean small manufacturing center. So now it's the decision of, does the inventory outweigh the transportation costs? Do you add in some additional cross stocks that may be close to the manufacturing site to be able to allow to store more material? If you don't have that opportunity or the space isn't available, then it comes down to what is the transit associated with the manufacturing point to OEM, or are you willing to give up some of that just-in-time nature to allow for the ability to have more material on site or less frequent stops that are taking place as they go in?
Interesting, thank you. Some more questions coming through. So we're jumping around a little bit, maybe based on our conversation about the data side. Another anonymous question: what's your data wish list? What data signals do you think may be missing in communicating a complete story to internal and external stakeholders? So as we look to improve, and we talked about quality of data, what are you looking for, whether it be in terms of systems or that communication? I'll throw that to the panel so you can fight amongst yourselves.
You always want to have the best forecast data available, one that not only we can rely on, but also our customers can rely on. And we know that's a challenge right now because we can't predict when some of this chip crisis will end and who may end up getting those. But historically, the better the forecast information and real solid part information, and be able to align those two together has always been a big pro for us, because we can do so much with that. If it's not available, at minimum have the ability for efficiency metrics on how often materials should be coming in, what is your predictive scheduling going to look like, at what point are you going to make those changes. But I would still say at least from an automotive industry, the ability to forecast more effectively gives everybody an opportunity to manage upstream as opposed to be really reactive.
As far as Court said, it's the PFEP data in some cases might be a little bit out of date. And as we're picking up product, if we're forecasting ahead of time and planning trucks ahead of time, if that information isn't correct, at that point in time, we're going to be making a lot of wrong decisions. So from the Tier 1's perspective, that PFEP data should be clean and very, very good, or else it's going to affect the carrier in picking up those deliveries. So I would echo your point to a T.
The return on investment of going out and actually getting that information, it's there. We've done in many cases where we go out and actually measure ourselves, weigh ourselves, and then it just turns into a maintenance process that exists. But the return associated with getting that information into a system and then maintained is really viable for everybody within the supply chain.
Yeah, and I mentioned, thank you. And I mentioned I wanted to head south of the border just because coming in next year, because there's not enough challenges right now. Mexico miscellaneous revenue ruling is planning to come into effect, but Dick, you might be able to correct me on that if that's changed. Is there an update, and what's going to be the effect on OEMs and tier suppliers?
Yeah, that cloud's been above us, I think, for the last 7 to 8 months, and we're starting to get trickle down of information from Mexico. And the clarity is definitely not as clear as what it should be on this revenue ruling. But for the basic purposes, the OEMs are ahead of the game here and have been working on it for a while with their primary carriers. it looks like right now, January 1 with a test date in the month of December to test the paperwork. And if you can think of, I guess, what we do with Canada, freight, cross-border freight into and out of Canada, it's kind of putting the same restraints in Mexico, is that each of the drivers need to carry the paperwork with them of the parts that they're moving. So 60% of the freight in Mexico was not being reported to the Mexico government, so it was cash transactions. Mexico government said, you're going to start reporting it, and they've put a lot of emphasis on it. Now, Mexico has said a lot of things in the past as far as enforcement that really hasn't come into play, but I think everybody's taking this very seriously, that it's going to change the paperwork requirement down there. For the most part, that paperwork requirement will be placed on the carriers. The carriers, it seems, at least with my discussions with the carriers in Mexico, seem to be in pretty good shape, especially the large carriers. The smaller carriers are being helped by larger carriers, which is a little bit unusual. In the US, they might not do that, but there's a lot of collaboration going on between larger carriers and smaller carriers to get them in compliance. Intermediaries down there have some responsibility also as far as filing with the Mexico SAT and disclosing transactions. And as to the extent of that, we're still investigating if it's a zero filing revenue or if it's just another filing that's the case. So certain people in the audience probably are far and away ahead of this than what I am, but it's a major emphasis within our company to make sure that we gain total compliance within the date specified.
Yeah, great, and it's good that everyone in the room has something to look forward to next year. You know, we all thought that was going to be dull, so we're running pretty tight on time. So we've spent a lot of time talking about mitigating the challenges and the current landscape. So let's spend just a minute or two here looking at what's coming ahead in terms of freight network management. So we're redefining it. What does it look like in 2022, but 2025 as well? Does it look a whole lot different to now? Are we looking at different problems? And I realize as we are running out of time, that's a bigger question. But yeah, some final thoughts on that. I'll go to you, Cor.
Yeah, I think that if you think about the rate spike that we're seeing, which by and large caused by the pandemic, but you saw a rapid increase in e-commerce, and that is not going to go away. I think people are assuming that maybe that rate hit will go down. I think what we're seeing is there's a new change in dynamic with younger buyers that'll continue to go e-commerce. So that will take up a significant amount of capacity. So whether it's the automotive industry, retail, et cetera, I think we have to redefine what dedicated capacity means, what the dedicated network, what contracted carriers and what they're looking for means, because it will continue to be a very competitive environment for drivers, for freight. And I think the big thing for us is once we secure the dedicated capacity is how do we ensure that we maintain it for a period of time so that we keep rates at a consistent level. You're not using the spot market as much as others would do. That gives you a competitive advantage, but it's how quickly the tides can turn when you're securing dedicated capacity and then realize that you no longer have freight. You have to be nimble enough to push that dedicated capacity elsewhere, but still keep it underneath your organization's wings, or else it's going to be a very difficult time for you to continue to give good rates and good competitive costs to your customers.
Yeah, excellent.
From my standpoint, something similar. The long-haul trucking is really where the problem is. LTL, the driver count is up. Now the freight's up a little bit higher than the driver's count, thus the rates. But in the long-haul trucking side of it is really where all of our companies need to focus in on and make sure that we are enhancing the quality of life of our drivers, or we're going to continue on with the problems that we're seeing today.
Doug, no pressure, but final thoughts for the whole session, all on you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm surprised my wife didn't send in a message or something like that asking me something about dinner, but that's good. I think, really technology, in my opinion, coming from the space that I've been in, is going to really open the market up in a different way. It's going to make people think about things differently. I've repeated this over and over again. I think technology will actually allow players into the space that haven't been in the space before. It could be someone who owns a couple of trucks, instead of the larger organizations. I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that, in my opinion. Different types of vehicles. You've seen it with companies like Amazon jump in with technology and really compete against the FedEx and the UPS, right? In a different kind of way, but that technology has enabled them to actually leap kind of those organizations. I think you're going to see some of that continue. Platforms that come out there that will allow the independent contractor to have access to these customers they necessarily haven't had before. So technology, in my opinion, is really going to open it back up. I think we're really constrained right now, but I think you're going to start to see this open up in a different way in the future.
So exciting times ahead, and I've overrun, so apologies there. But gentlemen, thank you very much. Doug, Dick, and Court. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.